I'm so excited. Okay, and what else was I going to cover with you guys? So with the source, our motto is we don't speculate, we go to the source. Because a lot of times people like the view, they can talk
Get
about
straight from the
specific
horse's mouth.
topics, yeah, and it's like, do you really know what you're talking about?
Okay.
You know what I mean? Let's bring some people on that know what they're talking about. First and foremost, they can be professionals, they can be, master's degree educational, but they can also come from the University of Hard Knocks, and that's why they're doing what they're doing now. So from all spectrums, it can be the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful. But what we do, like in the beginning, I'm like, this is Angie, the host, the source, the source is back. This is what we're doing. But then I swear you guys in, because that's kind of like, do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Because it's like we're telling the truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the beautiful, and the truth. So
you're letting your audience know this is
we're
authentic.
branding. Yes, it's very authentic.
All
so
right.
that's kind of like our branding.
That's great.
I remember when I interviewed Rhonda Field. Remember when you were supposed to come on for the gun control? I was like, "Do you swear to?" Because I told her this before. She goes, "I do. Yes, I do." She was laughing on the. I was like, "Rhonda, she's."
Her organization is right down the street from ours.
Is it KUHS? Is it like okay?
It's right down the street.
I'm ashamed of myself for not being alive. Seeing your
oh, you'll get there.
I didn't even get to your old place.
You'll come through.
Charlotta, I remember I saw you in the documentary on TV.
Did you?
That was
Did
nice
you
to
see
see
it?
you.
Yes.
Great.
Okay.
With the segment they filmed here.
Okay, that's Lost for Life.
Yeah, there you go. I
Yes.
saw that. That was great. I was watching it and said, hey, I know her.
Yeah.
So you look good.
Thank you.
You look good. I remember when I was talking to you, like, I can't come.
Oh my God. My nurse just discharged me Monday.
Oh, that's so good.
That's
awesome.
Give me a little momentum.
So do you have like physical therapy?
No,
or
everybody's
anything
done.
like
She
that?
was the last one.
Good,
Physical
good.
therapy, they let me go last week. And she did Monday. So I was like,
Thank
no more people
goodness.
at the house.
I know that's kind of
I feel
different.
like
It's
4
kind of
people
different
a
to have
day.
people
It's
in
like,
your house, but it's good to have people in your house though because you can heal. What the evidence has shown
Yes.
that you can heal better in your home than being in a facility or a rehab center or stuff like that because you're not in your domain, you're not in your habitat. But then there's the play side of that because you have people, strangers coming in your house, taking
And
care
they
of you
were all
like, who
great.
is
They
this?
were all good. They were really good to me.
Good. Yeah, I was in home. I just got out of home care like just recently. This last like couple of weeks, I've been in home care for like the last 5 years. I've been a director for a couple of agencies.
Because you're already right.
I am.
Yes. Yeah, because you was relating to everything else to me.
Yes,
You
I knew exactly
understood,
what was going on, and I
yes.
was also a trauma 2 ICU nurse.
Oh, wow.
Too,
So you understood.
yeah, I understand. The physiological, holistic. I'm all about holistic. Conventional therapy is good, but when you just want to put a pill and give somebody a pill to cover over some real symptoms, it's like you got to treat this person as a whole, mind, body, and spirit.
Yes.
And some people, they don't have to accept the spiritual side, and that's okay. But you got to be able to offer like the meditation and those different kinds of things if that's what's going to help a person, if they will receive it. So even if you're working on the physiological, you can look at, okay, what alternatives, what natural things can we give this person? So I'm big on that. I'm big on conventional and adjunct therapies that can help a person. Because when somebody has an infection, okay, let's go ahead and give them some antibiotics, but let's go ahead and help build up their immunity too. With different types of herbs and.
Oh yeah. That would be good for me. If I could have all that.
Yeah.
Because I took when they got done taking the pink line out, then they gave me oral because they gave me oral antibiotics, 2 of them. Trying to say, well, we just gonna back it up, make sure you don't have no more infection. And I broke out. I took it for a week and I broke out. My face had knots back here. My whole body was
hives.
I'm just recovering from the side effects.
Oh my gosh.
That was worse than the surgery. So yeah, talking about holistic. That would I could have done something natural.
You know what? There's this herb. It's like a Chinese mushroom. It's called Ganoderma lucidum, and actually, oh my gosh, there's clinical studies that have been done in regards to this Chinese mushroom. Like the emperor back in the day, it was only put aside for the emperor's family, the royal family. So they didn't share it with the public at all. And it cured like so many diseases. So what this does, what they've done on the clinical studies, it helps with kidney function. Like if your kidneys are like failing, it shows it's proven to help with the kidney function, liver function. It's like a detoxer. It helps like bring homeostasis to your body. So people that are diabetic or they have blood pressure issues, it helps with all of those issues, stabilizes it. Like people that have been taking it for like 3 months, they start showing significant changes, and physicians start taking them off of their like medication. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, and there's a lot of holistic physician doctors that prescribe it to their patients. And I'll tell you, they give it to HIV patients, cancer patients. It's a pre-cancer
So it's
preventative.
just that one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I take it, and I'll tell you, a lot of people were getting sick this whole like season. I haven't been getting sick. I've been taking it for like the last 6 months, and I feel good. It helps with like
What's
your
the little
memory.
capsules? Is it
Little
gel
capsules.
capsules?
Little tiny little
expensive?
capsules. Not really. No, you can find it on Amazon. Like, so if you look up Ganoderma lucida, the best kind though is the Ganoderma Organigold.
So you can't get in like vitamin powders or anything like that?
You might be able to. You might be able to. I would call them and ask them, but I'm telling you, it's really good. I'll have to give you write it down for you guys. Yeah, I did my studies before I took it. I'm like, is there what they say though is somebody's taking anticoagulation, like warfarin, not to take it because it kind of thins your blood a little bit to keep like the smoothness so that you're not building up cholesterol and clots and stuff. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That beats baby aspirin.
Are we almost?
Yeah, about 2 minutes.
Okay. I'll shut the door.
All right. I did a hard workout a couple days ago and my legs are on fire.
Oh, boy.
I'm like,
That's why my legs hurt.
oh my goodness. I'm like,
That's crazy.
walking,
My legs are sore for the same reason.
Is that right?
like doing
Training
some
this,
squats.
Training this one guy.
Yeah, I see the gym and everything. I'm like, good. That's right up your alley.
Yeah. Built that just for me.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So many
Can you
dreams coming true.
Oh,
That's beautiful.
The source, and we have the host Angie, Charlotte Evans.
Write that down. So I can get it correct. Yeah, tell me.
What you been up to, bruh?
That's just working.
It's you.
So I don't have any headphones. They're all like this.
Oh, do you
Hardest
want to
working
just
man.
use mine?
Yeah, I
Here.
need these.
And then you can hand it to me.
I'll give it back to you once I get all the levels set, and then I'll hand it to you.
Okay.
I need to be able to hear a little bit.
Okay, cool. You guys will have to come on my TV show as well. It airs in April. Yeah, in April. We'll have to look at the dates.
And welcome to Chosen Advocates. Host Angie coming up with guests Charlotta Evans and Sean Taylor. Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to KUHSdenver.com. Okay, go ahead.
Hi everybody, welcome to The Source. Guess what? I have two amazing guests on my show. They have done significant things in the community, but not only that, they have a very real story. As you guys know, The Source does not speculate. We go directly to the source, and we go to the issues of the problem of the matter that is happening in our communities. And it's not something that is a facade. These people have a real history on the topics that we're going to be addressing. And so today we're going to be addressing grieving mothers, gun violence, and juvenile lifers. My two guests here, Charlotta Evans, is an amazing woman, mother um, of a child that was tragically lost at 3 years old in regards to gun violence. And she really turned her negative into a positive, and she's a strong voice, a strong advocate, and she's really running the race in such a way that she is going to win for the voices of juvenile lifers and what she significantly has done. I have Sean Taylor. He has an amazing story that he's going to share with you today. It is a very real story that happens to many children on our streets that are being affected by organized crime or just getting involved in the wrong issues, wrong people, but find themselves with going to prison for issues that maybe that was kind of manipulated with people just, kind of, I don't know, just maybe whitewashing just what society is saying that you have to be involved in. But he turned his negative to a positive, and I'm very proud to have these two guests on The Source. So, as you know, Angie has to always swear them in because we're going to tell the truth, the raw truth, the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's something that is beautiful. And so we're going to talk about this. So I'm going to swear my first guest in, Charlotta Evans. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do, Angie.
And Sean Taylor, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Of course.
All right, y'all. We're going to get this show on the road. I actually want to start with Charlotta. Charlotta, I really know that you have a story to tell, and I would love for you to kind of go into basically who you are, what happened as a mother in regards to your child. And I'm glad that you're able to talk about this now. You're able to share that story, and then what brought you to a point of transition and knowing that you wanted to be an advocate with what you're doing in the community.
Yes, thank you, Angie, for the invitation. I am Charlotta Evans, the mother of two boys, and now one is a man. Yeah, Calvin Hurd is my oldest son, my surviving son. And 20 years ago, I lost my 3-year-old son, Kason Xavier Evans, to a tragic drive-by shooting, kind of at the tail end of the summer of violence in the Park Hill area. So this was December 21st, 1995. And the tragic loss took place the 21st, a Thursday night, winter night, and receiving a call from a relative to go down to the Park Hill area to remove her and her 3-year-old daughter out of harm's way. And driving down there from Aurora to Park Hill. And the message was that there were shooters the night before and that she wanted to leave the home. And so I went down there, and my two boys were in the back. My oldest son was 6, 3 days from being 7, and my baby was 3 years old. And there was other other relatives in the car with us as well. Went down thinking that I can go grab her daughter, we can get out of the area, and continue going home and planning Christmas, as well as Calvin's birthday. He's going to be turning 7. My oldest son will be turning 7 on December 24th, Christmas Eve. And so thinking I can go down to the area, grab her, and just leave from that area. Well, we didn't escape that without the drivers returning, the shooters returning, excuse me. The shooters returned that following night that we were there. And between 6:45 and 7 p.m., we were fired upon 21 bullets, 14 bullets to the car, 7 to the home. I was the only one in the residence. My two boys were in the back seat of the car. My cousin, 22, was in the car, and my other niece, 17, was in the back seat with my boys. And all of this took place at that time within 15 minutes of us being there. And So 7 bullets to the home, 14 to the car. So the car kind of received way more of the bullets. And 2 bullets entered into the car, one through the back window, one through the side, and the one that came through the side window um, hit my baby boy in the head, fatal shot, shattered his brain stem. Once I came out of the house, jumped in the car, um, we drove a couple blocks, and that's when we found out that Kason had been hit by a bullet. And we pulled over a couple blocks from the home. I had went down to pick my niece up, so I grabbed her with her coat, ran out of the house. And so she was with me on my lap while we were driving down the street, and then finding that my baby had been shot. And 2 blocks away, we saw some people in the front of their home. Had to throw the car in park because my cousin was just in hysterics. She could not get control of herself. Threw the car in park. I get out and grab my son. I'm walking with him. He's still breathing, so I'm thinking the shot must not be fatal. He's still breathing. And at that point, my niece, the 17-year-old niece that was in the car with us, that went down there with us, she went in that home and called 911, called the family, called the church. And as the call was going through, the people at this home began to shout, "Get out of the house," when they found out that my baby had been shot. They told us we have to leave their home.
Wow.
And right when I'm leaving their home, the paramedics came through the door. And right as the paramedics came through the door, my 3-year-old son took his last breath in my arms.
Oh my gosh.
I handed him to the paramedics. They laid him down. They put a tube in his mouth, and they said they're going to try to revive him. I'm still not knowing or seeing where he was shot. But when I looked down on my clothing, I was covered in blood. I never knew where it came from. They rushed us to the police station. Myself, my cousin that was in the car, my niece, and then they went and actually got my niece that called me to come down there. They took her to the police station as well. They questioned us because they were just overwhelmed, taken back with who would do this, and a 3-year-old lost his life. So it was it touched the community in a way like never before. The police department, everyone was so saddened by it, and they just could not imagine who would have done this. So they questioned us. We knew nothing. My niece that we went down there, she didn't know. What was the mistaken identity regarding the car? We drove my cousin's car down there, and they thought that was another rival gang member's car.
Oh my gosh.
And so when they did the shooting, they really didn't think that it was any stranger. And so that's kind of what took place there. And 2 hours later at the police department is when I found out Kason was gone, and they weren't able to revive him.
So when that occurred, when they took your baby, they took you straight to the police department for questioning. They didn't allow you to be with your son?
They didn't allow me to be with my son. They took him, and then my first reaction was to see about my surviving son and make sure he was okay. And so the people in the house, I asked them to give me something to cover myself up. And they gave me a comforter. It's very symbolic. And they gave me a cover. I covered myself up, and then I went to see about my son. Then by that time, my family was there. So they were able to see about him and then go to the hospital. It was mandatory that I went to the police station because of, what had happened. They knew what I didn't know. I didn't know my baby was gone. They knew he was. And so that's why they needed significant information. And so it was, I had to go there.
So talk to us a little bit about when you found out that your baby was gone, when it finally hit you, and talk to us about basically the transition of how that shock was. Where were you at, like, just mentally, just everything that's going on, especially like with the police department, with investigations, and then finding out, who the shooters were, kind of go through that in regards to like how you found out was it an adult, juveniles,
Mhm.
and kind of give us some insight in regards to that.
Well, to understand that when you go through a tragedy like that, a crisis like that, trauma like that, it takes such a long time to come to the realization that it's a reality. So, yeah, all of these things are taking place, but like um, the fact that when they took me to the police station, 2 hours later, after they questioned us, then victim assistance came in and said, "Your baby died. Your baby's case on is dead." Okay, at that point, so the whole time I'm thinking I'm letting them take him because they're going to revive him. I'm not thinking they're going to say he's gone. So that was kind of more of why I was able to say, let me check on my son. You take him, you do your job. As a paramedics, I'm not thinking he's going to leave me, you know. And so when they come 2 hours later to tell me that he's gone, instantly I go into denial and anger. That was the first stages of grief that I experienced. And so, all I can remember is I'm ready to turn over that table, that little brown table desk that was in that room. And I felt all of that anger bubbling up in me. And then the fact of, no way, this has actually happened. So leaving there, going to the hospital, and the lines, the walls lined with my church family, my family, and they're in the hospital, and and then them saying, they're looking at me, so right now I'm just like under a glory cloud in a sense. I'm just kind of, I feel empowered, but I'm feeling like still like a zombie, I guess I could say. And so they're looking at me like my family didn't think that I knew because of my countenance, because of how I was holding up. And
And where do you think that strength came from? Like just that holding up that countenance, that, like you said, that glory cloud around you. Like where do you feel
well,
that?
I recall once they came in and told me that Kason was gone. Um, then 10 minutes later, I remember hearing echoing through the corridors my cousin Reese hollering for me. My family name is Bunny, nickname. She's calling for me, echoing through the police station, and she's saying, "Kason's dead. Kason's dead. Bunny, Bunny, Kason's dead." I remember taking on a strength right there to go see about her, to check on her. She was falling apart. And I remember when that strength, when that glory came upon me, and that was when it came. And it just like kicked in, and I became like a protector of her. And I went to her and comforted her. When I walked in the hospital, that same strength was upon me. They didn't know that I knew because of my countenance. And my sister was falling apart. And my brother said, "Go check on your sister." She was trembling. I went and hugged her, and she stopped trembling instantly. And she was just looking at me like, she was in a daze herself. And that's when that did not lift off of me for a whole entire year.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was able to have Calvin's birthday, which was the 24th, bury Kason. That night is at midnight after I left the hospital. I went into the restroom to get away from my family, to get away from everyone. I felt so overwhelmed and I was hurting on the inside. I went in, I went to the restroom because that was where I knew I could get away. And I went in there and I sat. I was sitting in there, and all of a sudden I felt a presence. And through the presence, it was a suggestion and a question simultaneously. Have you considered forgiving, and will you forgive? This was the same night that Kason was shot. And I said in wonderment, like, "God, is that you?" Are you asking me to forgive?
Oh my goodness.
And it was, yes, I'll forgive. Of course I will. I said yes. I came out of the restroom. I went to bed. The following morning, the reporters came. They were asking my mother, myself, are you aware of who had done this? They did not find out who done this for 3 days. And I told the reporter, that time it was the Rocky Mountain, it was Rocky Mountain News at that time.
Okay.
And I told the reporter, I don't know who it was, but all I know is I forgive. I forgive whoever did this. And he said, how are you, didn't you just say you didn't know who it was? How are you forgiving? And I said, I don't know. All I know is I do.
Mm.
And that was on the front page of the newspaper. Mother of toddler that was slain forgives, and they haven't even found out who it was. Well, 3 days later, we found out they were teenagers. 3 teenagers, 2 15-year-olds and a 16-year-old
Wow.
that broke in a home, stole a car, stole guns, and went out shooting for pleasure.
Wow.
No apparent reason, just because they could.
Wow. You know, with that forgiveness and having that experience that you said that you had in the bathroom, and you didn't even know who the shooters were, but you knew that it was going to be a choice. You know,
Yes.
we live in a life of choices. Our life is based on all the choices that we make. And even though, I mean, we're not exempt from the bad and the ugly. We're just not. You know, we're human beings and we have a life, and we're born and we die. And in the middle of that is where we get to make choices if we are going to allow that anger, like you said, that you had felt, or that just, you know, overwhelming sense of who could do this, you know, and we can stay there. You know, we can choose to stay there. And then knowing that you pulled this strength out of, you know, we know that sometimes we can't explain a lot of things when we can pull strength from those hard things that can come our way. And knowing that 3 days later, you said, I don't know who it is, but I'm going to forgive. And that was on the newspaper. That shows people that it's a choice.
Yes.
I'm going to either forgive, or I'm going to have this offense in my heart that's going to eat me alive and can destroy me, because we all know with offense, or we know with anger, that it can take us in a whole different direction. And it can either take us to destruction, or it can take us to a path of greatness, a path of choosing to forgive, that, you know what, I can use this person. We all know that there is a higher power. We all know that, you know, I mean, as we look as people, that we have life in us, and when we see that life gone from us, there has to be a higher power. I mean, who can make this beautiful baby in a womb, you know, and go through that birthing process and experience that, and experience, you know, you seeing your children grow up and you having to experience what you experience. You know, that's something that is so beautiful, and what makes your story so beautiful, and what you have chosen to do was to forgive, and that led you on your path. So we're gonna stop right there, and we're gonna go into, because now you have said that there was teenagers.
Yes.
That you found out it was 3 teenagers, 2 15-year-olds and a 16-year-old.
Yes.
And there was no reason, rhyme or reason, as to why they did what they did. They just went out shooting, and you know, that's just what it was. And your son was taken just because of that leisure.
Yes.
And so, children, today, I really want parents to really hear this. If you are a teenager, if you are in your youth, listen to what this story is saying. This is not just a story, this is reality, and this is what's happening on our streets. We need to wake up. We need to realize the decisions that we make can hurt and harm and destroy and take life. We need to come together as a community, and we need to wake up, and we need to do things that are going to educate and inspire our children and our youth. Parents, wake up. Don't let your kids be on social media. Don't let them go and do whatever they want to do. You need to be involved in your children's lives, because if their families, if there's these children had parents that were involved, 9 times out of 10, this 15-year-old and 16-year-old would have never gotten their hands on guns, to go out and steal a car and all this other stuff. If we, first of all, as parents, regardless if you're a single parent or not a single parent, if you were involved, knowing it starts at the home first and foremost. And so I commend you for just taking that stance and being obedient to the voice that you heard. Are you going to forgive or are you not going to forgive? Because now you are where you are, and what you have done significantly, not only for the local community, but for the nation.
Yes.
Your voice has been heard.
Yes.
And people need to know who you are. People need to know that you are a mother, and there is thousands upon thousands and thousands of other mothers in our country that are experiencing the same tragedy. And something's got to give. Something's got to give, and it takes one person at a time. It takes a voice at a time. It takes a platform, and that's why I want to use this platform with the source to be able to have people know who you guys are and what they can do to also be involved. And they can really hear the real, true stories as to what's happening in our community, because it's not just all about pleasure and getting the money and getting the dime and getting the honeys and all those different kinds of things. It's about real life, and it's about real things that are happening. We need to inspire people to their greatness. And so I want people to hear more about who you are and your greatness and what God used in you, what you chose to allow the divine to use in you to be able to turn that negative into a positive. And now I sit here with Sean Taylor. Sean, your story is very, very significant and is such a ashes to beauty type story. And to know that you were on that other side, you were a teenager that made a different choice at that age, as an adolescent and in the youth. A lot of times adolescents, they're compulsive, and surrounding the scenario as to who you are, why you made the choices that you made. And I don't know, like Sean, like I said, Sean, he was convicted at 17 years old for a murder,
First degree
homicide.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk a little bit about where you were in that state, kind of what was happening before you made that decision. And we're going to talk about your youth and your adolescence, and we're going to talk about basically what happened. What was the transitional scenery basically from that point, making that decision, going through the court system, going through the judicial system, and then basically the bill that was passed and Ritter being able to, what did you say, commuted?
Yes.
Your sentence, and you were able to get out earlier. And that's the significant, and then what you're doing now. So kind of share with us basically that point before you made that decision. Kind of who were you hanging around with?
Right.
Kind of what was your influences?
Well, every time I listen to my sister Charlotte's story, one thing that I understand completely is her level of forgiveness, because I know that Charlotte understands that there are a lot of misguided youth within some of our neighborhoods. And even though, this was something divine within her that spoke to her, and she had to respond back in a very spiritual way by saying, "Yes, I will forgive." It makes it a little easier to forgive when you know that it was a kid who did this, a kid who was misguided, a kid who um, did not have proper parenting, a child who grew up idolizing gangsters and criminals. And that's who I was, a child who grew up idolizing the people, ironically, in the same Park Hill neighborhood where Kason was killed. I'm from Park Hill. Originally, I'm from Massachusetts, but I grew up in Park Hill. And the gang within the Park Hill neighborhood is the Bloods. And I joined that gang at the age of 14. I always say that I don't think that that gang would have been attractive to me. I don't think that that whole lifestyle would have been attractive to me if my father was in my life, and if my father would have had a strong influence over me, if my mother would have had a more strong influence over me and my brother and my sister. I'm of the opinion that there are some neighborhoods where kids grow up wanting to be a part of the yacht team for Yale or Harvard. And then there are other kids who grow up wanting to be a pimp because that's all they see, a drug dealer because that's all they see, or a gangbanger because that's all they see. It's not an excuse. It's far from an excuse, but it is a reality.
So are you saying about the domestication period that what they were exposed to um, is an influence? It obviously
It's
is.
a huge influence. It's a huge influence. You have to have strong parenting in your home to be led on the right path.
I believe 100% on that
Yeah,
with the parenting. And the thing is, when people don't know any better, because people die because of lack of knowledge, we all know that.
yeah,
And so if, say, previous generations, they only knew what they knew
that's right.
and they didn't know any better, there's that vicious cycle that
Yeah,
continues and continues and continues until someone rises up,
that's right.
until someone cuts that generational curse, like, nope,
That's
this is
right.
not what's going to happen anymore further in the next
That's
generation.
right. And we're all used in some type of way to bring a message across. The situation with Charletta and her son who lost his life, there's probably no telling how many lives were saved because of that incident. Young men and women who said, I don't want to be a part of this gang anymore because I don't want to be in the same group, grouped with the same individuals who would just shoot a gun, not caring who caught the bullet.
Mm.
And that was the same situation with me at the age of 17, 3 days after my 17th birthday. I pointed a gun at someone's house. The so-called rival was in this house, and I shot that 45 caliber handgun one time, one bullet, and we drove away. And that night, we found out that that bullet took someone's life. He was a 17-year-old young man just like me, and he was trying his best to hide um, in the door jamb of behind the screen door within that house. Which is why I did not see him. I did not see anyone. All I saw was a table and a wall and a lamp. And I said, I'm going to scare these guys in this house. And pulled the trigger one time and drove away. Uh, so that is what led me into being charged with first degree homicide, universal malice. The counts were universal malice and extreme indifference. Those counts meaning that I was the kind of kid who would shoot at a house and not care who the bullet caught. Now, there was a time when I would dispute that as a young man. I would say, well, I'm not that kind of person, but obviously I was because I pointed a gun at someone's house and pulled the trigger. I spent 22 years in prison for that crime of homicide. Many of those years were spent trying to become a better me, because I did not like the person who I was. And I did not want to be just another uh, guy from the neighborhood who ends up going to prison and dying in prison. So I told myself while I was there that I still have life within me. I'm still breathing. And if I'm still breathing, that means that I can still help someone. So I started helping the people around me in the prison. I taught adult basic education. I taught English second language. I taught Islam. I did many charitable things while I was there, and I changed who I was. And 20 years into my sentence, I petitioned the outgoing governor, Bill Ritter, to commute my sentence because he had created a board called the Juvenile Clemency Board, which means that he wanted everyone who was convicted as a juvenile to at least have a chance to prove that they have uh, outgrown their immature behavior and maybe get a second chance. And I petitioned, I sent in everything to him, proving, trying my best to prove to him that I have changed, I have grown. And there was a person who told me, "You're wasting your time." He was a good friend of mine. He said, "You're wasting your time. It probably won't work for you." And I said, "Even if it doesn't, I'm still alive.
Mm.
I'm still alive. And if I have to spend the rest of my life in prison, I'm going to try to make sure that the guys who I come into contact with in this prison leave this prison with the intent to never come back,
Mm.
with the
Wow.
intent to stop being gang members, stop doing drugs, and stop committing crimes." And so I said, this is just a shot, but it doesn't mean that I'm not worth anything in this prison. 2 years after I put in that commute, I received word that my sentence had been commuted from 40 years, which was the life sentence in 1989, which is what I received, to 5 years of parole.
Wow.
And I was released May 11th, no, excuse me, May 18th, 2011.
Wow. What did that make you feel? Like, as soon as you heard the news, as soon as that news came to you, like, explain to the audience, like, the listeners, like, how did that make you feel that at that moment?
I had resolved myself to living inside of my head for 22 years. I had a family, I had a car, I had a house, all of that inside of my head.
Mm.
So when I was told that I would be able to maybe one day have a car, a home, and a family, in reality, there weren't enough tears. There weren't enough tears. I got dehydrated from crying so much
Wow.
to be able to have a second chance to live outside of prison.
That's amazing, because you chose to change into a better you. You didn't, even though a tragedy had happened and you had realized that you had made a mistake, and you didn't really realize that shooting a gun at a house was going to kill somebody. You just wanted to scare somebody. And that's what you were thinking in your adolescent mind,
Exactly.
that you weren't intentionally trying to kill somebody. You didn't have that in your heart. You're just like, I'm going to scare them. But in reality, that bullet really took someone's life. And you were faced with having to experience going through the judicial system as a youth, 17 years old, haven't even hit, manhood yet.
True.
And knowing the experience that you've seen with your friends, like you said, that were gang members, and, they were basically your family, and just kind of showing you that this is the way that we need to have anger, and we're going to have revival. What is it?
Rivalry.
Rivalry.
Mhm.
against another, gang. And it's just so sad that how youth can be looking for, like you said, if you had your mother who was stronger, a parent or a father who was strong to be able to guide you from that direction, because we all look for, we're all looking to be accepted. And if our parents are not going to accept us, our parents are always trying to put us down, and not encourage us and uplift us and guide us in the right direction, you find yourself looking for that acceptance.
Right.
And when you're raised in the hood and you see these different types of people around you, they're going to raise you. So parents, if you're not raising your children, someone is.
That's right. And you don't have to take on the daunting task of teaching children how not to kill, because every human being has uh, an innate navigation system that says don't do certain things. We just have to teach our children not to do stupid things, like don't point a gun at someone's house and pull the trigger. That's dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, why don't you put that gun down and read this book? There needs to be more people within our neighborhoods that take on the task of teaching the children to be smarter.
That's right. Takes a village to raise a child,
That's
right?
right.
It takes a community to come together and put their bias and all of the stuff that society tells us in regards to fueling hate
Right.
against one another. We're all human beings. As a nurse, as I was telling you guys, that when someone's cut or I'm putting in an IV, we all bleed red. It doesn't matter about what color. It doesn't matter about what social economic background you come from. At the end of the day, we're human beings, and we as a community have to come together and raise our children, because there's many and many and many of Sean Taylors out in our communities that are 17, that are 16, that are 15, just like those boys that took your son's life. There's many of those young men and young women out in our communities that a lot of people do not see, because they're so caught up in the grind. They're so caught up in, I got to get mine. I got to, do my job. I got to get that white picket fence. I got to get the biggest car. And, it's great to have those things, but it's also important for us to snap out of it and really come to reality and come together as a people to be able to help those Sean Taylors, to be able to help those mothers, to be able to rise up to the occasion and build a community to be a voice. And so that's what's going to lead me into Charletta. When you decided to forgive, and then you found out who pulled the trigger.
Yes.
Two 15-year-olds and a 16-year-old.
Mhm.
What happened next, and where did that lead you?
Excuse me. Boy, I tell you, I'm just really just thinking about, just with the words that Sean was speaking. Um, I Where that led me was the fact that I had chosen to say yes to forgiveness. And retrospect and looking back on it, it was the miracle of forgiveness that was introduced to me, and I said yes to it. I embraced it and said yes. That generally doesn't happen in that way that quickly. It was the same night of me losing Kason, just hours later, 4 hours later, when I experienced um, this divine interruption, I would say, and it was a miracle. And when I look and see the struggle of forgiveness with some other parents that have lost children, I was graced with that yes. I was graced with that opportunity to embrace that, and that has empowered my life. And when 3 weeks after that experience is when they called on me to come do a pretrial hearing. I will back up the 3 days later when they found out who this was that killed Kason. After 2,500 calls went into the police station because they had bragged that they had had a shootout with rival gangs, and that did not happen. And the 10 o'clock that same night, they found out they killed a 3-year-old baby boy. But before they done that, they had bragged that they had a shootout with the rival gang. And finding out that they were teens, the part that devastated me more than anything was the fact that they were teens with guns. I couldn't even imagine them having access or even wanting to have a gun. That was what took me back more than anything. How did they get their hands on guns? And so by them breaking in a home, finding a gun that had never been used, was in a box under a bed, was purchased in 1970, had bullets in the box, that gun was taken from that home. And that's the gun that killed my 3-year-old son. Raymond Johnson was the shooter, the main shooter. There were 2 shooters and a driver. Raymond Johnson is the one that took my son's life. 3 weeks later, they said there's a pretrial hearing after they had captured them. They were pretty much apprehended, and once they were apprehended and they were tried with the first degree murder, and that is when I really knew what this forgiveness really meant. When I walked into the courtroom and there stood Raymond Johnson across the courtroom, jerry curl, white shirt, black pants, shackled, and I looked at him, all I could see was a baby. I'm like, he's a kid.
He's a little boy.
He's a little boy.
Mm-hmm.
Then as I stared at him, it was as if I could see through his chest. I could see his heart. And all I witnessed was a heart of compassion, a soft, tender little boy. And I'm looking at him, then it all connected for me. This was that yes to that miracle of forgiveness. That you don't look upon someone that has taken the life of your baby, of your child, no matter what age, from a careless act, with compassion. And right then I had a bond of connection with him that he knew nothing of. But that's, I felt, was a connection to him. He was not that notorious gang member, murderer, thug, worst of the worst that the DAs told me he was.
I think it is so strange that you and I had the same reaction to him. I had already been in prison for 5 or 6 years when I saw him walk into the Lyman Correctional Facility. And I said, he was a pigeon-toed little boy. I said, look at this little boy walking into this prison full of men.
Yes.
And I went to him and I said, I don't know what your plans are, but there are a lot of men in this prison who want to see you become a better person. I'm going to help with that.
Wow. So Sean,
Yes.
you were in prison when
Raymond Johnson.
Raymond Johnson got there, and you said you seen the same thing
Same exact thing.
that
That was my
Charletta
her
seen in the
reaction
courtroom.
was the same reaction I had. I wanted to cry when I saw
Wow.
him.
Well,
I
I'm
said-
like here even with my tears right now
I said,
because
"Look
it's
at
just
this little
this
boy
is deep,
walking in."
you know?
Yes.
Wow. That is intense. So you didn't even have a connection with Charletta at that time yet, Sean, right?
No.
Wow. Wow is all I can
Yes.
say
Yes, wow.
to that. And so when you, and I want to go back to like Sean, like you seen him. So when you told him that there was somebody there to help him be better, what was his reaction?
I think at the time he was telling me what I wanted to hear, which was, oh, hey, good to meet you, blah, 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 because he still had some growing pains to go through in prison.
Hmm.
But
And what's growing pains mean?
growing pains in prison means that you're still doing things that you shouldn't be doing.
Okay.
Uh, Hanging around people you shouldn't be hanging around, and basically getting yourself into trouble in prison. Still being around the gang that you claimed when you were free.
Hmm.
It took it took Raymond. It didn't take him a long time, but it took him a little while before he began to listen to men like myself and other very wise men on the prison yard. And he chose a spiritual path. He chose a spiritual path, and he began to improve himself and build a better Raymond Johnson. Yes.
That's beautiful. That is so beautiful. So coming to that point, he got convicted for killing your baby.
Yes.
Then what came next, Charlotta?
Him right along with the other shooter. Paul Littlejohn was convicted as well. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. The driver received the reduction of sentencing for turning over state's evidence. So he did a total, well, he was sentenced 16 years. He did about 7 of those years. At that time, um, I felt as if I needed to give back, but I also knew I had to heal. And so I took some time off of I spoke of that glory cloud that was on me for an entire year. In that particular time, at the end of that point, is when I began to deal with all of the grief that I had to face, and I took myself on a journey to embrace all the stages of grief, which is the denial, the anger, the depression, the bargaining, and then the acceptance. And one that was not considered one stage has been added, but I could have told them that guilt was another one. So anger and guilt was my deepest, the thing that gripped me the most about um, losing Kason. It was the guilt and the anger. I had to embrace those things, and I had to embrace them gradually. I would want to run from them, but I knew that I would not be empowered if I did not embrace them. And I wanted to be functional for my surviving son. I didn't want to steal away into the darkness on him. And that's when I took some time off. 4 years I took off, work, everything, and took time to heal. And then I found myself continuing to cry in my pillow at night. And I said, something has to change. All of these ideas you have in your head, you need to implement them. You need to get started. 4 years later, that's what I did. In 2003, I started a gang prevention. I operated in that gang prevention for 11 years. 3 generations of kids went through the programming.
Wow.
A very successful program. And
I heard you got started in your backyard.
That's right. That's right.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I forgot about the memorial fund. There was a memorial fund that was taking place. Actually, the community gave when Kason passed. There was a memorial fund, and we had a bank account and all that stuff. I had totally spaced that out, and its small, still voice said, "The money."
Oh,
What
wow.
money? Oh, the memorial account that the Nation of Islam, the community leaders, um, wonderful people in the community gave that money and put that in that memorial fund. I was able to take that money and get a trampoline, post flyers, go out, send other kids out. And we end up with, I had 2 events in my backyard. That's how I recruited. The first time we had probably 30 kids. The second time we had 60 with their families.
Wow.
And so that was huge. And so we were able to recruit that way. And that's how we got our kids.
That's
And
amazing.
and they were the name of my organization was called Red Cross Blue Shield Gang Prevention Incorporated.
Wow.
And so it was the Red Cross, the Red Cross of Christ, and then the Blue Shield. So we collaborated those colors, blue and red, to make purple, the Crips and the Bloods to make purple, which is the color of royalty. And that's how we did
Wow.
that. And so we did gang prevention. And so we got the kids when they were 8, followed them all the way till they um, um, registered for college.
Wow.
Then, as the years went on, we had to get them when they were 6 because of the influence was greater. And so that, yeah, so it was 11 years of successful gang prevention, and our kids was Warriors of Hope. That was the name of our
Wow.
kids' summer camps. Um, you name it. We did 8 successful summer camps, and just an excellent program.
Oh my
And
gosh.
still to this day, the kids are successful. No gang activity.
See, and look it.
Yes.
It's by that tragedy and
Yes.
saying yes and forgiving and seeing Raymond Johnson
Yes.
and seeing him with the heart of compassion,
Yes.
going through your healing that you went through. And you said, okay, I got to do this for me
Yes.
because I have to embrace all these different steps of grieving. Did you do that by yourself? Did you have somebody help you through that? Or was it just a mixture of anything? Or was it just you going through those different stages yourself?
Yes, I went through those different stages myself. I did have therapy. That was early on. That was like maybe the beginning of '96. This took place the latter, December 21st of '95. Early part of '96, I did have therapy right along with my surviving son Calvin had therapy as well. But really, that's that going through that pain and that guilt that grips you on your innermost, and that's that being in your prayer closet and taking step by step, allowing yourself to heal and embrace that guilt and facing that guilt. I'm his mother. He's 3. I put him in harm's way. That guilt.
Mm.
Your children trust you. And for me to take them there as I went to go pick up another relative, it's it, that's that guilt. That's those things that a mother would have to face and deal with. I embraced it so that it wouldn't hinder me in my life throughout. I needed to be a productive parent for my surviving son. That
And
was
not
my
only that, a
motivation.
productive parent, you're being a productive parent, like a
For,
mother
yes,
for community,
I'm
right?
mama, that's right.
Mama Charletta over here, I'm telling you.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's
Absolutely.
so beautiful how you turn the beauty into, I mean, turn this ashes into beauty. You know, you turn that mourning into dancing. You know, you lifted up on the eagle's wings, and you know, you found that strength. You ran and you didn't grow weary, you know, and even though you went through those 4 years of transition of healing,
Yes.
you know, we got to talk to people about healing, you know, recognizing when there is tragedy that may happen in your life, especially whenever losing a child, because I know that it happens, it's happening this day. It's going through that realization and facing yourself and really knowing yourself and really knowing that I have to go through this. And not only that, like, you don't have to be a religious person, but we know prayer changes situations. It doesn't have to, you know, finding that divine within yourself and really accepting that you can't take the burden on yourself. You got to let it go one way or another, and prayer does help that. And so knowing that you did that and looking at, you know, what you've done for youth from the ages of 8, and then you guys went into 6,
Yes.
and following them all the way till they went to college, that's
Yes.
amazing.
It is amazing, and wonderful, wonderful group of warriors.
Wow, that is so awesome.
Wonderful
And
group
was
of warriors.
families engaged? Did you guys provide education to parents as well,
And
or?
we didn't, because all I would tell them is, give me your kids. If you
Wow.
give me your kids, that's all I want. And that's what they did. They trusted me with their children,
Wow.
and that's how desperate I was to make a change. And I I didn't put any strain on the, if they let me have their kids, let me have the kids.
Wow.
And that was I wanted to say, you say you don't have to be religious. No, you don't, but you do have to be spiritual.
You do have to be spiritual,
And
absolutely.
if you are, it is a spiritual, it's spiritually initiated, forgiveness is.
Yes, it is.
And it is a divine experience.
It is.
And it is a catapult, and it is a catalyst. It's what
It's a
you need. It's a catalyst.
Catalyst.
That's right. It's a catalyst. It's what you need to face all the things that I was able to face. The root of that is the yes to forgiveness.
Mm,
Then you're able to embrace and heal properly.
absolutely.
If you don't have the forgiveness there, you won't heal properly, because you'll have the malice, you'll have the resentment, you'll have the revenge that
The
human
vendetta.
nature wants to lash out.
Mm, it's true.
If I could go back to something you said, which I think makes me sad, is you said that you went through a lot of self healing.
Yes.
It's a shame that many of the communities um, would have had several countless victims advocacy groups there to assist them through this. And within the neighborhoods where the most crime happens, where are the most victims, there are the most victims of violent crimes, there are barely any victim advocacy
That's
groups.
that's true.
I think that is, I think that's a travesty of justice.
It is.
Why is it that in the neighborhoods where most people are shot, stabbed, raped, assaulted,
Hmm.
there are barely any victim advocacy groups?
And you know what? That brings that question to the forefront, because as we look at our judicial system and we look at, people in like civic leaders and those different types of things, it takes us as a community, those advocates like you, Sean, like you, Charletta, like me, to be able to bring attention to those politicians and legislators, those people that are initiating things for the county, on where the dollars are going first and foremost. Because if we're electing them, we should have a say.
That's right.
And at the election time and the campaigns and those different kinds of things that are happening now, us as a community, we need to not just, oh well, they're campaigning and they're going through their elections and I'm not going to vote or anything like that. We have the power as a community to bring a change, because you know what, nothing changes unless someone in the community makes it change. Just like the Amber Law, that was initiated by a civilian. Why? Because her daughter got murdered and nothing had happened. There was nothing initiated. So a civilian and a group of civilians that got together said, no more. We need you, um, judges and law enforcement, to initiate something. You know, those kinds of things. And so I believe it's the power of the people.
Yes.
We have those voices and we can bring about that change and we can initiate specific things and have these types of platforms. That's like what we're doing here. But that brings a good question. Why is that? Why is that? Because that is not even right. At the end of the day, when all of this crime and these victims of violent crimes are not getting those victims advocates, well, maybe we need to raise up those victim advocates to go into those places where I am not scared at the end of the day, because the only one that takes my life is my creator at the end of the day.
Yes.
I'm going to run my race in such a way that I'm going to win, Just like Martin Luther King and Abraham Lincoln and all of them, they had all this scrutiny. Whenever you go against the grain of society, yes, you're going to have people hate on you, and you're going to have people not want you to shut up. But at the end of the day, we have those voices, and we can change something. So as you guys can hear, and maybe I'm thinking about what you're thinking about, because Park Hill, are you talking about Park Hill? We need to have more intervention. And people of all races shouldn't be scared at the end of the day. Because like I said, whenever I take blood from somebody or I'm putting an IV in somebody, it's red.
Yes.
You know, we have to be the people to bring about that change. And I think that should be a good question that we should ask. You know, those civic leaders and those politicians and those legislators that oversee those districts, what are they going to do about it? Those are the things that we should bring about community, about having, you know, a town hall on that issue. And what are we going to do to change that? And that's why right now, that's why we're talking about what we're talking about, because we have to bring about change in our communities with our youth, with our parents, with these areas that need to have attention. You know, what was the most saddest thing that I had seen in my, you know, experience of going into different types of areas? Oh my goodness. The time has gone away from us. Wow. Oh my gosh, guys, we're going to have to actually bring you guys back on again. But very, very quickly, Charlotta and Sean, please let them know what organizations to get in contact with you in regards to who you are. They want to know more information, and then also for you, Sean. So Charlotta?
Yes, the contact for my organization, Victim and Offender Mitigation Initiative, which is the last 4 years I've been involved with families, victim family members, and the offender family members. The way that you can contact me is through my website, www.vomi-rjustice.org.
Awesome. Okay. And what about you, Sean, in regards to the organization that you're connected with? Very quickly, let people know about that and how they can contact you.
I'm the deputy director of the Second Chance Center. Second Chance Center is an organization that is dedicated to helping formerly incarcerated men and women transition into lives of success and fulfillment. And you can get in contact with the Second Chance Center through www.scccolorado.org.
Awesome. Well, thank you, listeners. This is Angie signing out of The Source. Look us up on Facebook, The Source Talk Show, on other guests and other things that are coming through the pipeline. We're actually going to have our TV show this Saturday. Look us up, find out about more information, but I will be bringing Charlotta and Sean back onto the show so we can finish our conversation. Much love, y'all. Oh my God, that was like so, it seemed like it was so quick. Man, I wanted to talk about more about the U.S. Supreme Court and then what you're doing now for other people. So we'll have to talk about, now that we've done the story, what advocacies you're doing with the U.S. Supreme Court, what you're doing nationally, and